Today we're discussing faith and representation in the media, an incredibly important topic, and I'm really pleased to have four hugely impressive experts that are joining us this afternoon to enlighten and educate us all on some really important points actually around representation in the media. So I'm going to do some brief introductions, and I'm going to invite our guests to actually introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about some of the important work that they do. But first of all, I'd like us all to give a really warm welcome to Imam Sabah Ahmedi, also known as the Young Imam, Rabbi Igor Zinkov, Rabbi at the Liberal Jewish Synagogue. Just give a wave there or a smile so everyone knows who he is. Nirali Patel, who's a student in theology, religion and the philosophy of religion at the University of Cambridge. Welcome, Nirali. And Reverend Kate Bottley, who's a priest, journalist and TV presenter on the BBC Sunday morning breakfast. And you may recognise her also from Gogglebox. So a huge welcome to our four incredible guests. I would like to allow you all, though, to tell us a little bit about what you do and why this topic is of particular interest to you. And if I could start, please, with Rabbi Igor, that would be brilliant.
Hello, everybody. Yes, as you said, I am Rabbi at the Liberal Jewish Synagogue, and my particular interest is, especially during the last year and a half, was the use of social media and the use and making the synagogue accessible, regardless of where you are, and media comes straight there. So.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Igor. If I could go to Reverend Kate Bottley.
Hello, I'm the Reverend Kate Bottley. I am a priest in North Nottinghamshire, but that's probably not where you'd recognise me from. I started out my TV work on a TV show called Gogglebox, which is on Channel 4 on a Friday night. And from there, I've developed a ministry in the media. So I'm like a supply vicar these days, but I pop up on telly and on radio, including my own show on Radio 2, and presenting Songs of Praise and Sunday Morning Live.
Thank you, Reverend Kate. It's a pleasure to have you. So thank you so much for joining us. Nirali, it would be lovely if we could hear a little bit about yourself and the reason for your interest in this subject matter.
Hi, I'm an MPhil student, and I'm also a Hindu practitioner myself. And the reason I'm really passionate about the topic of faith in media is that my dad has a newsagent, and so I've always been surrounded by media, particularly the newspapers, from a very, very young age, and constantly reading and updating myself. And now, as I've grown up, and like Rabbi Igor said, the rise of social media, especially in this lockdown, and how prevalent it's become of transmitting faith through media. So I'm really, really passionate about the idea.
Thank you, Nirali. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to hearing from you as the conversation develops. And last but by no means least, Sabah Ahmedi, it would be brilliant to hear from you now, please.
Good afternoon. I am Sabah Ahmedi. I am the Young Imam on social media, on all platforms. If you're not following me, you've got to follow me, because that's how you're going to get to know what life as a young British Muslim, as an Imam, as a coffee lover, does CrossFit, goes gyms, got 2 kids, life as a father is like living in the UK, in Britain. I'm working with the BBC at the moment on some documentaries. I work with the UN. I've also worked with Bloomberg. It's just a never-ending cycle of being a Muslim in this day and age in the media, trying to help people understand what life is as a Muslim and Islam.
Thank you very much. So thank you to all of you. I'd like to kick off with some questions and so we can get going. And for those of you that have joined us, please don't worry, there is a chat box, as Bintal mentioned, where you can ask some questions, and I'll definitely keep an eye out and get those questions asked for you. And there's some opportunity at the end of some of our discussion for you to also ask some of your questions. So first of all, I'd like to ask our panelists this afternoon, why is the representation of faith in the media so important? And if I could come to you first, Nirali, that would be great.
I think the key thing about the media is it reaches the masses, right? Education can only take us so far, and often there's been quite a lot of critique about the religious education system already, and how the lack of representation and the accuracy of it. And there's also going to be, I think, living in London, and particularly in Brent, I'm very lucky that I live in a diverse area, that I've got different faith groups surrounding me all the time. I've got a mosque around the corner, a church, a synagogue. So I've got a good idea of what different faiths are. But people who don't live in such diverse areas, it's the media that's going to be able to give them that opportunity to interact with different faith groups. It's almost like an interfaith dialogue of its own, because that's the only way that you can really understand and engage and relate with people that are of different faiths, if you can't see them in your day-to-day lives, especially in the lockdown when we can't really go out and meet each other anymore.
Absolutely, very, very good, a good point there. And I think that's commonly becoming a bit of a challenge. Access, the only access being that we're seeing represented on screen or in the newspapers or other mediums. If I could come to Reverend Kate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the most powerful thing any of us own is the phone in our pocket and the TV in our living room. That's the most powerful tool that has to gather and divide people like nothing else. And also what I'm seeing from my own perspective in terms of a Christian culture is that the gap between what the church seems to understand and believe and represent and the gap between the culture seems to be getting ever wider to me. So the story I always relate is I was around the debate around women bishops a few years ago in my churches. I went to my haircut. And my hairdresser said, "Oh, what are you doing tonight?" You know, like hairdressers do. "What are you doing tonight? Going out?" sort of thing. And I said, "Oh, I'm going to a debate about women bishops." And Shazni, my hairdresser, went, "Oh, what's a bishop?" You know, the language that we presume, and I do it all the time too, as a church-going Christian, I presume people know what I'm talking about when I say words like bishop, and they don't. Because the gap between understanding faith and the culture is getting ever wider. So what I see our jobs as people who are in the media, but also have faith, is to try and translate those two languages as the gap gets ever wider.
Brilliant. Thank you, Reverend Kate. And is it okay to call you Reverend Kate, or would you prefer if I say Reverend Kate Bottley?
Just Kate is great.
Oh, okay.
I have been called a lot worse.
Okay.
Believe me. Just Kate's lovely.
With your permission, I'll call you Kate. Thank you. Can I come to Sabah, please?
Yes. Look, I think representation in the media of religion is really important. I think there can only be positive representation because religion doesn't teach negativity. Like all faiths out there teach to love mankind, love human beings, and fulfill your rights to your fellow individuals. Personally, as an imam, people don't even know what an imam is, and the image they have of an imam is a middle-aged man, a long white beard, long white robes, no banter. Do you know what I mean? You can't even sit and have a chat with him. That is the image they've got. So when I rock up to a meeting, and I've emailed 7,000 journalists in the UK to be like, "Look, I'm a young Muslim, I'm an imam, believe it or not." I've had people say to me, "Wow, are you that same guy that messaged me to meet for a chat and you're an imam?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's me." So we have a massive responsibility, me as a Muslim, as an individual, as an imam, to get out there and help people understand what Islam is and what an imam is, because some people don't even know what an imam is, don't even know what a Muslim is. So that is massive. And being in the media, we should be on the forefront in helping people understand our faiths and our beliefs.
I'm sure you get asked the same, which is I get stopped in the street and people go, "Are you a real one?"
Yeah.
Like when they see a dog collar, like they go, "And are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to wear earrings?
Yeah,
are you allowed to like kiss your husband?" And I'm like, "Well,
yeah, you've got questions.
We've got two kids.
Can you lead prayers in chinos and a shirt?"
Yeah, exactly. I bet you get it too, Rabbi Igor. I bet you get that whole, are you a real rabbi, and are you allowed to do that as a rabbi? Like there's some sort of like kind of cosmic forbiddance of being a normal person because you've got a faith.
Yes, absolutely.
That was your key, Robert. That was your key, I go to. Drop in your comment, boss.
Yeah, shall I jump in and then just say?
Well, just actually before we do that, I think you made a good point there, Sabah, on people not knowing what an imam is, and I wondered if you take the opportunity.
Why not? I've said it about 1 million times. I'll crack on with it again. It's all on my Instagram page. An imam is basically like a priest. It's someone who leads prayers. It's someone who's representative of their community. And you don't have to be middle-aged. You can have banter, you can have a laugh. You don't have to have a long white beard. I ain't got a long white beard. And that it's real. It's an imam is a faith leader.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Now,
You're
sorry
welcome. Thank you.
Sorry to cut you there, Rabbi Igor. It would be really great, actually, if you could explain your role as a rabbi and also, of course, answer the question. That may, again, be something that you're asked constantly.
Yes. So I think that the best definition of a rabbi in Judaism is a teacher. I don't think it's somebody who is on a higher level than people. No, it's I am on the same level as everybody else. I am not representing God or on earth. So there's a direct connection between people and God in Judaism. So, the best way is I sometimes represent community in prayer and in some public speeches like this. But the best way to describe it is to say as a teacher. And that's I think that the most important part. And that brings us to the importance of representation of religion and faith in media. I think that apart from educational, so we all of us, I think, agree that educational aspect is really important. Just to tell people, look, religion is not something. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be to dictate you what to do. It can sometimes ask right questions that will help you to navigate your life. And that will help you in the difficult moments or in joyful moments as well. So that's first aspect, the educational part. The second one is, yes, fighting stereotypes. That's certainly very important because, and we will come to it, I think, that whatever you see, if you want to write an article about a Jew, you would go to Google and you would find a person with a black hat and peyot and a beard, and that's a Jew for an average person in the world. Well, it doesn't speak to me. It doesn't, I'll give you, I'll tell you a secret. It doesn't speak to most of Jews in the world. So when you and that's why I think it's important not just represent faith, but represent faith in all its diversity. And it is no difference to representation of any group, to representation of people of any minorities, of any background, different backgrounds, different accents, different skin color. And the same with religion, just because I want people to recognize themselves in what they see on TV and media.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. Kate, did you want to?
Yeah, I just really wanted to echo that, really. And I think the other thing is, as people of faith, quite often the stuff that makes the news is the bad news stories, isn't there? And I'm sure my other brothers and sisters in faith here, is your stomach lurches, doesn't it? When something comes on the headlines, you go, oh no, what's happened now, sort of thing, when faith is mentioned in those headlines. And it can make you feel sort of, your tummies feel all funny, because the stories that make those new headlines, the stories that make the best programs, is the ones that are the extremes of that. Like you were just saying, Rabbi, you know, those kind of, you know, the stereotypes and the extremes are what makes the most entertaining news story. And so part of what I see our jobs as, and certainly my job as, and maybe you do too, is to keep normalizing faith and telling the good news stories of our faith, talking about what joins us together and not what divides us, talking about the brilliant things that faith can bring to someone's life and existence, whether they subscribe to an organized religion or not. But this is still something that is part of our common humanity, is a shared spiritual story. And that some of us express it through organized religion, but other people express it in other ways. So for me, it's about waving a big banner going, look, you can believe in something bigger than yourself and not be a bigot or a homophobe or any of those other awful things that you think there might be.
Can I cut in? Sorry, do you know what? You know, Kate, see, you said that when faiths are represented in the media in a negative light, no faith should be treated negatively in the media, because no faith teaches violence and hatred. That's a fact. And when someone says, and I can only talk about Islam, because I'm affected every single day on how the media represent my faith. And I'm sorry if I get emotional, but it's the truth. And unless you're a Muslim, sometimes it's hard to understand and comprehend the struggles we go through every single day when your name and your faith is treated like a threat to society. I'm going to give you an example, yeah? I'm sorry, Joanna, you probably want to ask your next question, but I'll just keep it brief.
No, please go on, Sabah.
I was asked, so I've emailed 1,000 journalists across the UK, yeah, and I met a good number of them. I met an editor of a newsroom, and I kid you not, he said to me, look, Sabah, I'm scared that Sharia law is taking over. Imagine, that's someone who has a hand in driving the agenda. And he's saying to me, I'm scared Sharia law is taking over. So this just shows the importance of having correct representation in the media of faith, of Muslims, because when I have questions like that triggered towards me, it makes me think, what am I actually dealing with? Am I dealing with the public, or am I dealing with those individuals who have a hand in driving the agenda, in telling the people the news about Islam? And that's real life. And that's why I feel like having young Muslim voices like mine in the media, and it works, it connects, and young people are able to connect with me, only then are we able to see a shift in the way people perceive religion. When you've got a third of Britons who feel that Islam threatens the British way of life, that's a massive, massive number. And I'm dealing with that every single day of the week. And being an Imam, one of my responsibilities is to help people understand my faith. And that's why social media and media representation of minorities is so important. End of my point, sorry.
Well, Sabah, actually, just while you're on that, and I will come to the others, just while you're speaking about that, how do we challenge that?
I'll tell you how, yeah. So for example, the way you portray Muslims in the media, yeah, I do genuinely feel like there is a double standard of how people are represented in the media, yeah. I think covering positive stories in the media is really important on Muslims, because that is super important. Then you're able to see the true teachings of Islam. And also I feel like people should be educated on what they report on before they report on it. So if journalists are reporting about Islam, they should actually go and meet a Muslim, or they should go to a mosque and have a chat with someone and be like, look, this is what I'm being told. This is what people are saying Islam is, but is that really what the truth is? So having honest conversations, creating a platform for conversation and dialogue to answer what people think are not PC questions, only then are we going to be able to see a shift in the way things happen in the media.
Thank you very much, Sabah. I wanted to come on to this topic later, but I think just while we're here, it might be worth just giving you all an opportunity to touch on it now. And I'd like to give an example of something that happened to me recently, and wonder how you all may feel about this, any thoughts you have on this. So during an inclusion training session, we were talking about representation. And a gentleman was talking about the fact that he worked for a charity that existed obviously to raise funds for a particular part of Africa. So the film crew went out to Africa and they filmed the areas in which, and the stories that captured individuals who were disadvantaged and experiencing poverty. Now, he was really clear that that wasn't the single story of that part of Africa. And he said but while he was there, the experiences he had with the broad range of people he met in Africa couldn't be captured in this particular film, because what the film was trying to do was to raise funds for those who needed those funds. So if he'd have, shown a video that spoke to all the other parts of that existence and of those cultures, it may not have landed and achieved the result that they wanted, which was ultimately to raise funds. And it made me think, and I thought it was a very interesting situation to be in, because Chimamanda Adichie talks about the danger of a single story. So if you keep showing someone in one story in one way, that's what they become to the majority. And I just wondered, because I think it's really interesting that in instances where elements of something might be accurate, but it's not the single story, how can professionals, whether behind the camera or on screen, ensure that an accurate representation of faith and religion is portrayed. And I wonder if Rabbi Igor, I could come to you on that.
Thank you. It's a really good question. And I think that we need to begin with a wider question. So is there one correct answer to a question, to any question? And I think that very often you will see, and I will tell you one of the principles in Judaism, that there is a book, very important book for modern Judaism, is called Talmud. In fact, it's multi-volume collection of rabbinic wisdom, and it has one principle. It has a question or a topic, and then different rabbis contribute to it and offer a different perspective. And then on the margins of the page, you will see next generations of rabbis contributing into it. And then afterwards, you will see different commentaries. And I think that what this tradition teaches us is that there's a nuance. And the answer for the past may not work for us today. And even in the same time, there might be different truths, and they all can be truthful. And I think that recognizing the nuance and not jumping to a very certain conclusion is a very important trait with that, and very important value that we need to remind ourselves, and not assume that the other side is not just wrong, but evil, but trying to understand that, there is truth and there is some kind of light and message in perspectives, in different views, and but try to understand that there's nuance in each story.
Thank you, Rabbi Igor. Nirali, I'd like to ask you if you wouldn't mind touching on that point, if you had anything to offer.
Yes, I was just going to say, touching on from what Rabbi Igor said, that with Hinduism, it's so difficult to get an accurate representation if you're only taking one story, because the term Hindu itself never existed before the British colonials came to India, found the river Sindhu, and decided that this is what the people of this country and their faith is going to be called. It was never one homogenized thing. It was a sort of a template that was put upon the people of that country, and their faith was just put into one category of Hinduism. And it works now, and it's part of our society, and it's not something that we can currently change. But it also means that there's such a huge spectrum of different beliefs, and that concentrating on one story or one aspect of one community is never, ever going to be the full range of what it actually means to be a Hindu. And so I think, like Rabbi Igor said, the nuance and also the understanding the full spectrum of what a Hindu can be, and also definitely learning the history of the term as well. So if it's difficult to not portray all the different kinds of Hindu communities, because it is extremely difficult, it's a whole country, acknowledging the fact that it's not possible to do this in one episode of one series, and that these are some links that you can go on to find some more information. And this is a brief history of why we are unable to show the full story.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Nirali. I think there's some really great ideas there as well. So I think both of those points that you've made there on that is fantastic. Kate, I wonder if I might ask you, because you're obviously working quite heavily in television, I wonder if you could offer some practical tips to producers, to casting agents. What can they do to make sure that some of the points that Rabbi Igor and Nirali have mentioned actually become something we start to see on screen?
For me, it's about having an active interest in people's spirituality and faith. I think whether it's Britishness or whatever it is, we're very reluctant to ask people about what they believe. We feel that it's somehow an intrusion in their private life. But actually, most people believe in something, even if they can't articulate what that is. The sense of something bigger than yourself is a universal human thing. Now, whether, like I said before, that's expressed in an organised religion that we've got represented here, or whether it's much more fluid than that, it's about normalising that conversation. So, you know, if you are casting someone, it's perfectly reasonable to ask them, and do you have a spirituality? Do you have a faith? You know, I always find the question is better than going, are you religious? Because most people will go, no, I'm not religious. Oh, no, because religion is, that question of are you religious is seen as something that's not something that we'd like to confess that we are, although present company accepted, obviously. So asking about spirituality and belief is a very normal thing to ask. And, you know, the old saying is there were no atheists on the Titanic is a good place to start, I find. So I get people stop. My favourite thing people ever say to me when they bump into me and they recognise me in the cheese aisle in Morrison's is they say, I'm not religious, but... And I'm really interested in that but bit of that statement, because what they tend to mean by I'm not religious is I don't go to church every week, or I don't really pray except when something's going really bad, or those kind of things. So start the conversation there. Start the conversation from a place of inquisitiveness, of wanting to know more about the person and what makes them who they are. And their spirituality will be part of what makes them a human being. Whether they can express it in terms of Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Sikh, whether they can express it in those words is immaterial to me. Tell me what you believe, tell me what you're finding out, and tell me how your views have changed. And it's about normalizing that faith. So one of the programs that, you know, I'm best known for is Gogglebox, and I thought that program did it brilliantly. You know, it does it brilliantly. There's Jews, there's Christians, there's Muslims, there's people of all sorts of faiths and none, and people on the edges of their faith, or people who aren't really devout but sort of skirt around the edge of an organised religion, just being normal human beings on their sofas with the people they love in the world. It's really normal to believe in something bigger than yourself. And it's about having that conversation, not being embarrassed about asking people about their spirituality, making it just part of the, you know, have you got a pet? Do you believe in God? You know, these questions are fine.
Thank you, Kate. I think you touch on a really good point there. And that's around, I think you made a good point about the fact that, you know, spirituality is usually a universal thing that, you know, actually lots of people have in common. But I do think that you make a good point about if you ask the question, what is your religion? Or are you religious?
We find it here with funeral directors, you know, being a sort of nominal kind of, you know, whatever you want to call in terms of Christendom. Our funeral directors will go to a family and go, was he religious? To which the family will say no. And they think, oh, well, you won't want a vicar then. And actually, the family would probably really like a religious minister to take the funeral, but they don't really think they qualify for it because they don't go to church. And actually, it's much more nuanced than that. Faith and belief is much more nuanced than I am this, I am not that. It's much more fluid, you know, so you will, and we found this during lockdown, you know, when we were doing, lots of us did online stuff during lockdown, you know, we found that the attendance at church services over Zoom were 2, 3, 4 times than they would be in person, because people dipped in and dipped out. They went, oh, I can't commit to go every week, but I'd just like to light a candle if that's all right. And we think that's brilliant. And also, I think they also have the idea that those of us that are in charge of organised religion, that we want you fully signed up. We want you fully signed up, or we don't want you at all. And actually, we're really happy to just have those conversations. We've got all the same questions that people who don't believe have. You know, we have all the same doubts, don't we? You know, how can we not? And so what we've seen during the pandemic is a real resurgence of people lighting candles. You know, the clap for the NHS, that had a spirituality about it, didn't it? That unity that we all felt when we stood on our drives and clapped. You know, all those things can be tapped into about the conversation around spirituality, religion and belief.
Thank you. I'd like to ask you, Sabah, if that's okay. How do we break down, if you like, the stigma that is attached to saying I have a religion, and and place some pride back in that? And the reason I ask that is I was recently doing some work with an organisation that was made up of about 1,050 people, and they gave me some data, and in this data it said that their entire company was atheist, and I found that incredibly hard to believe. So when I ran my focus groups and listening groups, that wasn't accurate at all. But what it told me was that people were uncomfortable sharing what their faith, what their religion, what their beliefs were.
Well,
So
it's like the question. It's like the question on the census, isn't it? The question on the census is, what religion are you? Loads of people are not ticking that box. If there was a box that said, I'm not really sure, but I sort of believe in something, and I felt quite close to God when my mum died. If there were a box that said that, everybody'd tick it, wouldn't they? It's the wrong question. Are you religious? Is the wrong question.
No, thank you, Kate. No, Kate, thank you so much, Kate. Sabah, I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
I've forgotten the question you were asking. What was the question?
So why is it
Hey,
that...
are you playing that? Go on.
Sorry?
Sorry, go on, Joe.
The question was, why do you think, and how can we stop this? So many people are nervous about admitting and saying that they have a faith, a religion, a spirituality, and what can we do to make people feel more comfortable, whether it's at work or wherever, to speak up? Because in the example that you gave, Sabah, where you said you went and spoke to that reporter, that journalist, head of the newsroom, if, for example, they had individuals in their team who were of a particular faith, how do we make them feel comfortable enough to say, the way you're reporting is not accurate?
Do you know, I feel like we're so caught up in the rat race of life. Yeah, we haven't actually got time for honest conversations. It's literally one stop to the next, to the next, to the next. Parents haven't even got time to read their kids bedtime stories. They use Alexa and all these little pods. I genuinely think it's having an honest conversation, taking an active interest with those who you work with, and building a relationship with them, because then you're able to understand what they believe in, and you can draw the common denominators of we have more in common than not. And I think also people have that fear of committing to something. So that's a massive thing. Oh, I don't want to commit to that. That means just going to dictate how my life is. I'm not going to be able to do what I do. So I think understanding faith and religion is really important. And I think that's what it is. I think that's what's really important, to help people or educate people and allow them into your life to see what life is like. Like, for example, doing a mosque tour, which I'll be doing soon, my work with UK TV, it just shows people that, yeah, a Muslim is a regular person, and people of faith are normal people, and it's about normalizing that and building relationships.
Thank you so much, Sabah. I just wondered if now might be a good time actually to share if any of you have some examples of good representation when you feel that actually you have seen your faith accurately represented. Rabbi Igor, if I could start with you, if that's okay.
Thank you. I actually found this question quite difficult to answer, because what is good? I mean, because I have a very positive, very good example of a critique representation of Judaism on media that's really, I believe, was healthy. For example, during the pandemic, there were synagogues who ignored COVID restrictions, and they received some publicity. And I think that they impacted them, and it was good for the society in general, because I believe that sometimes media can play a very important role of being a mirror for the society. But what was not clear in the articles or in the coverage is that it was not all synagogues that are ignoring. I think that when you generalize, is that when it comes to being problematic. So another example of generalization, which I felt a bit threatened really about, was a coverage and some conversation around relatively recent Israeli-Palestinian conflict, when it was assumed by many people, and still is assumed, that if you are Jewish, you would certainly take an approach by unconditional support of Israel. But it's actually not true. If you are Jewish, you can be critical of the current approach that Israel is taking. So this is one example. And many Jews feel threatened, physically threatened, by some of the debate, some of the messages that are going in pro-Palestinian events. So that's one of the example of very unnuanced generalization. So, however, on the other side, it is true that Palestinians deserve and need support, but so do Jews who are on the other side. And when universities would put out a statement in support of Palestinians, I am in support of it personally, but I think that some Jewish students feel physical threat only because they're Jews, and people assume that they are part of this conspiracy, which is silly to, I mean, if you think about intellectually, that's quite dangerous thought, as if, yeah, I am responsible for all Israel's choices, I personally, or all Jews are responsible. So that's a few examples, I think. One, when a negative can be very positive, when or some critique can be positive, or when some critique can lead to a physical threat. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Igor. And how about yourself, Nirali?
I think we've come quite far in terms of representation of Hindus on TV and media. I think there's still a long way to go, but I remember when I was a child, it was really Apu on Simpsons that was the only brown person I was ever going to see on the screen. And that was an absolutely terrible stereotype. It was voiced by a white man who said at the time that he was very much aware that it was a stereotypical voice and that he hadn't actually met or knew anyone that was of the Hindu faith when he was voicing the character, even though it's become a very much beloved character of the Simpsons series. And it really affected people throughout society, especially brown children. But now we've got, like, I think it's the Arthur cartoon show that's got a character who's actually sick, and his name is Samir, and he's wearing a patka and a kara, which may seem small, but for little children that are in the playground, they're also wearing patkas and karas, that it's such a huge deal to see themselves represented, but also for their friends to see that what my friend is wearing is not abnormal, and it's a part of his faith, and it's something that shouldn't be laughed at or pointed at. I think also there's the Never Have I Ever, the Netflix series. I don't know if I should be talking about Netflix on UK TV, but the Never Have I Ever series, where I think it's made by Mindy Kaling, and the main character of the show, Devi, is Hindu, but it's not a trope, if that makes sense, that it's not that she's Hindu and that's the main thing that we're going to focus on. She's got a plethora of normal teenage problems that she goes through in high school, and being a Hindu is just one facet of her life, and she's still, as everybody here has said, she's still a normal person with normal problems. And I think having that kind of positive representation, I think there was also, in terms of documentaries, the Being documentary, like series by BBC, where it wasn't really trying to cast, I think it was looking at many different faiths and the lives of different religious individuals and the religious events that take place during their lives. And it wasn't trying to have a sort of negative light or a positive light. It was just showing the lives and just observing that this is what different religious traditions are. And it was really, really eye-opening for me as well.
Thank you, Nirali. Sabah, it'd be great to hear your thoughts.
Kate, I can see Kate on the edge of a seat, like, so. I'm only joking. I feel like, you know what, even if it's not a directly positive story, Muslims are doing this across the world or whatever, it can even just be the most subtlest things. Like you got Kate on Gogglebox and on the radio with their own show and this and that. Even having those figures, religious figures, but shown in a normal way, has such a massive impact on the way people think. So it's about having the representation. Is it 24.6% of the population globally are Muslims, and 1.6% of them were in films or on TV talking about or represented in TV. So maybe have an imam on TV, on Gogglebox, or just to, you know what I mean, just to normalize and show that so people can relate to that human aspect of an individual of faith. I think that's really, really important, because that's what is, like, I'll give you an example of, I did a piece with the London Time Out magazine, where they pictured me inside the mosque, and I'm known for wearing ridiculously bright socks. Anyway, so I was in the mosque, obviously no shoes on, and someone saw the picture in the magazine, and they DM me and said, Sabah, you're wearing these ridiculously pink socks. Where are they from? And I said, look, I went to Topman, and they're from Topman. And I kid you not, the guy sent me a selfie of him buying the same socks. And it was just that which he connected on. So it's about having those faith leaders on TV to show that they're regular people. And that's another way to help remove misconceptions and show that we're human beings.
You're an influencer, Sabah. Check
I
you
won't go that
out.
far, Kate. I won't go that far.
Should have put a link on it. You could have
I'm
monetized that.
waiting for Happy Socks to actually sponsor me for socks. That's
love
another
those
conversation. But anyway, go on.
Thank you. Those some really brilliant and practical examples. I just wanted, as we've got 15 minutes, I just wanted to offer the audience an opportunity to ask any questions, if you had any at this stage. No question is a silly question. Please use the chat function. It's an open conversation. You may not always feel comfortable, but it's a safe space to feel uncomfortable.
While we're waiting for that, I mean, we've talked a lot about telly, obviously there's social media as well that a lot of us are working through us, and I've started on TikTok recently, much to the despair of my teenagers, and I'm not great on it, I'll admit that now, but you know, you've got to try, right? And just people not believing you're a real one, just not, you know, there's a few with me with my dog collar on and my robes on and stuff, and people genuinely thinking that this is the weirdest fancy dress outfit they've ever seen.
Hey, can we change dog collar? I hate that word, a dog collar.
Clerical collar. I'll call it a clerical. That's the proper phrase, is a clerical collar. I'll call it by its proper name. Okay.
Please,
clerical collar. Me wearing my clerical collar, and people just thinking it's the weirdest kind of fancy dress they've ever seen. And this conversation around, and I acknowledge my white Western Christian privilege, being the nominalized national religion and all that. So I hear you, brothers and sisters, and I recognize my privilege, you know, but while we're talking about privilege, it's worth saying that atheism is Western privilege, right? It's Western white affluent privilege. You know, when you've got money and power and all those sorts of things, it's almost like you don't need God. And so coming back to what you were saying, Joe, about that company that you went to where they said everyone's an atheist, hardly surprising really that would be the perception. Because, you know, most of the world believes in God. Most of the world. It might not be true in this country, but in the rest of the world, most people believe in God. So we acknowledge that it's unusual to not believe in anything.
Kate, do you know you said earlier that during lockdown you noticed a lot of people joining online. I had the exact same thing when we did that piece for BBC the One Show, do you remember? Where we did it together, and I saw a massive spike. And you're right, people do believe in some kind of supreme being, something out there, and they look at that rope of hope.
Yeah.
And when I was doing my Instagram lives during lockdown, there were people who were saying, look, we don't believe in anything specifically, but we believe in something.
Yeah, I did an Instagram thing where I just lit a candle every night for a month and just left it burning for a whole minute on Instagram. That was all I did. And the comments below were, I'm not religious, but I'm not really religious, but I'm not religious, but could you say a prayer for my mum? Could you say my dad's not very well at the moment, or I'm really worried about X, Y, and you just think that we're tapping into something that is exactly what makes us human. You know, we might dress it up in different ways, we might express it in different ways, but what essentially makes us human is connecting better with ourselves, knowing ourselves as well as we can, connecting better with other human beings like the lovely humans here, and connecting better with the thing that is bigger than us, which I call God, but other people call other things.
And I also feel like a lot of young people in this day and age are looking for that. I think our generation, my generation.
My mate, who's a nun, I said to her, have you heard about this mindfulness thing? And she said, yeah, I call it prayer. We've been doing it for 2,000 years, love.
Well, yeah, they're looking for something more outside of their own realm. And I think young people specifically, I've seen on social media, really are looking for something else to get them through the day. And that's why putting little prayers out every single day. Reels do really well. Whoever's on social media, the attention span of individuals, youngsters nowadays, 15, 20 seconds, and reels do so well. Like some of my reels are 250,000 views, and people just are looking for that prayer to get them through every single day. And a lot of young people are turning to something out of their lives.
Yeah, this is certainly universal. And this is true as well for Judaism. And I experienced increased number of people who just watching from the outside. So because we are on YouTube now, so they can just join and just watch and see what's happening there. It's just and it's it's a very, there is a very good joke, very good old Jewish joke, that when a Jew just gets to a desert island, and in a year when they rescued this Jew, and he's showing people around also, so this is where I slept, this is where I cooked my food, this is my first synagogue, this is my second synagogue. So wait a minute, in a desert island, 2 synagogues, you built 2 synagogues, why? What do you mean why? This is my synagogue, and this is synagogue I'm not going to put my feet into ever. And there's some truth in it as well, because I think there should be difference. There should be not only different faith representation in general, but also a representation of different kinds of Muslims, different kinds of Christians, different kinds of Jews, different kinds of people who believe. I think that we are coming away from the binary in all areas and spheres in our lives, and we should go away from the binary approach to religion. So it is not either or, it is not whether you believe or not. It is a spectrum, as it is everywhere.
So just before we sort of come to the end, and I wonder if I could get some last thoughts, and Kate, please do, your hand was up just then, so if there's any more you wanted to add.
I was just going to say about the producers. You asked a question earlier about what can we say to producers, and I think what we're hearing here is, don't be afraid to make programs about faith and think that nobody will watch them. It depends on how you're making the program about faith. Okay, so I'm desperate to make a program about death at the moment, especially coming off the back of what we made of, because it's a universal thing that, it's going to happen. We're all terminal. And I want to make something about the lighter side of death, but people are absolutely phobic about making a TV show about it, but people love to talk to me about it in coffee shops. It's the first thing anyone says to me in a supermarket is, my mum's just died, can I talk to you? Yeah, of course you can. So, don't be afraid. Don't think that because you make a TV show about religion or belief or faith that nobody will watch it. All depends how you package it, how you market it, and how you make it palatable. It's not a thing people don't want to talk about.
And very lastly, because we are almost coming to the end, and thank you for that, Kate, because it's really useful. I wondered if you could just touch on how the representation of faith can affect the faithful depending on its portrayal. So I know you touched on that, Sabah, but I wonder if you could you could all give some lasting thoughts on this, so that we kind of inspire our audience to go off and have that in mind when creating content. So Sabah, would you like to pick up on that?
Yeah,
Just
I think whether it's computer games or it's TV, whatever you see has a massive effect on what you believe, on the way you think. And once a certain narrative is reinforced over and over again, it's sad to say that is the narrative which you start believing. And if there's no counter narrative, you're none the wiser. So whatever you see on the TV has a massive part to play in what you think. And I think that's super important. So I'm waiting for people to ask questions about Islam and faith and learn it instead of believing what you see on TV.
Thank you, Sabah. And Nirali, I just wondered if you had any thoughts on the impact that the portrayal of particular faith actually has on those with the faith, those existing individuals practicing the faith.
I think what you touched on earlier about some people not willing to reveal their religious identity or saying that they're atheist, it may be because they don't particularly belong or feel that they belong to an organized religion, but it also may be because their personal religion has been so negatively portrayed within the media that they're too scared of the prejudice to reveal their religious identity. And I think that it's just about conversation and being able to have that dialogue that gets rid of it. But I think that definitely has a huge effect on that feeling of wanting to hide away. And I think the positive representation, so highlighting the good things that faith groups do. And want to also say that by positive representation, I don't mean creating a fake image or a fabricated image that shows that, oh, everything they're doing is amazing. I'm just saying highlighting the things that they're already doing, but that for the masses to see rather than just that one community. And that can then encourage other people of faith to continue their actions. And so, for example, like charity work and relief work, especially during the lockdown, it can encourage them having that kind of media attention, having other people of faith seeing their own faith groups doing these kind of things and seeing them on TV can encourage them to actively participate in their own faith and therefore actively participate in society and create a much better fabricated society.
Thank you, Nirali. Rabbi Igor, do you have anything you'd like to add on that?
Well, just one thing. It seems to me that a lot of what is coming in, what has been coming on the media, has been about our shared experience, something that unites us, and it's wonderful, and it should be there, and it does create a sense of unity. However, I think that we shouldn't stop there. I think there was a philosopher, Emmanuel Levinas, a French philosopher, and he developed this theory of a radical appreciation and love of other. So when you see the other person in front of you, you have to, it's your responsibility to understand that the other person is made in the same image of God as you. And therefore, so it develops this much further. It's a beautiful theory. But I think that what is important for us is not to be afraid to say and celebrate our differences. We must begin with dialogue when we discuss our similarities and something that unites us as different faith groups, as different people with different backgrounds. However, I think that the appreciations of differences in our approach to life and our belief in our is what makes us a good society, and tolerant, and coexistence will really be. So don't be afraid of difference.
Thank you. I think you make a good point there, Rabbi, and I know we've come to the end, but maybe any of you, Kate or Sabah or Nirali, or of course Rabbi Igor, you could pick up on this. It was just the fact that obviously we're on a call, we're on a webinar now, and you're all representing and speaking on behalf of different, or your experiences of different faiths. And I wonder if there is ever, whether there's a need to point to or talk about whether there is any balancing that needs to be done in the workplace, for example, in terms of including everyone's faith, because equality isn't sort of taking from one and giving it to another, right? So we need everyone to feel that they're comfortable and confident to talk about their faith, even if it's not entirely the same as the person who sat next to them. So I just wondered if any of you had any thoughts on how do we welcome this myriad of faiths into the workplace, and for those people to feel that they actually belong and can share the truth of those.
Can I take sorry. I think what's one thing that's really important is or two things. One is to have a multi-faith prayer room. Really important, yeah, really important. And number two, to celebrate, well, first of all, recognize the celebrations of different faiths, and then celebrate them in the workplace. Because not only will those individuals of that certain faith feel like they have a part to play in that workforce and they feel valued, but also it's a means for education for everyone in the workplace about their colleagues, and that in itself will create a harmonious and enjoyable workplace where you know about your individuals and what they believe in. It makes it more personal. I think that's super important.
Thank you, Sabah. And I'm conscious we've got 1 minute left. So is there anybody that would like to share some lasting thoughts?
I think the question you were asking about encouraging it in the workplace, I'd echo what Sabah said. I used to be a multi-faith chaplain in a college for all faiths and none, and it was about exploiting people's natural inquisitiveness about others. It was about taking something that someone's celebrating and saying, tell me what you're passionate about, tell me what you love. Oh, it's this festival, is it? Right, well, you tell me, as somebody who doesn't know about this, you tell me what you love about this particular celebration in your faith or in your culture, and we'll run with that. So it's about it being led by the person who is living in that experience and not imposed from outside. It's about journeying together. It's about we've said it time and time again on this, it's actually it's about continuing that natural inquisitiveness we've got of other human beings and what their truth is, and being willing to be wrong within that, and also being willing to be led into a really new and interesting and exciting place, and to see that there might be something that you could take from someone else's experience that will make your life richer, and that we haven't got it all sewn up.
So Joe, can I ask one last point, Joe? I think it's really, we're talking media representation. I think it's so important to have young Muslim voices in the media. People can agree to disagree, but I feel like at the moment, Islam is demonized so much in the media. People's perceptions of Islam are distorted. We face it as a Muslim community every single day. I think having voices in the media, it might not be me stood on TV with the Holy Quran saying, you must believe. That's not what Islam teaches, but it's about having those subtle those subtle images or voices which can help reinforce the truth about religion. I think that's super important, and that's my point.
Thank you very much to you all. I'm conscious that we might start to lose people because we're on the hour now, but I just wanted to say a huge thank you to you all for sharing all of your experiences this afternoon.